Very warm welcome. You're watching World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky may have hoped to leave the White House on Friday after positive talks with Donald Trump. Perhaps one that sealed with a minerals deal with US as a backstop to Russian aggression, if not an outright security guarantee. But clearly, that did not happen. Instead, Volodymyr Zelensky faced an extraordinary dressing down in front of the world's media after President Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance demanded that he show more gratitude for years of US support. In fact, as per a White House official, after Trump decided that Zelensky was not in a place to negotiate, he directed Secretary Rubio and his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, to deliver the message that it was time for Zelensky to leave. The Ukrainians were holding nearby in a separate room, and that's standard for foreign leader visits. Typically, they reconvene for lunch, but the Ukrainians would not be dining at the White House as the prepared food sat nearby on carts in a hallway. The Ukrainians were instructed to leave. Russia has reacted to the Oval Office spat. They have called it a miracle that Trump restrained from hitting Zelensky. The shouting match between the two heads of state, a rather unprecedented sight at the Oval Office, has now opened a Pandora's box not just for Ukraine but all of Europe and UK, raising pertinent questions. Can Ukraine and Europe still count on the US coming to its defense? What happens to NATO's own security? And most importantly, is Europe even enough to deter Russia in Ukraine without US military?
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 and
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, Everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know that.
bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not in a
Mr.
good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the
there.
cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the
What-
United
what
States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West
if
speaking?
you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
that there,
thank you
accept
to
that-
American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
that
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
All right, so Donald Trump over there very much maintaining that the Ukrainian president is not in a position to negotiate. At the same time, CNN spoke to a White House official who shared details with us with regards to what exactly ensued after that spat in the Oval Office. So what happened post this fistfight? Trump consulted the US Vice President J.D. Vance, even the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Along with him was the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Now, Trump decided that Zelensky was not in a place to negotiate, and so he soon directed Marco Rubio to ask the Ukrainian president to leave the White House. Ukrainians were in the meanwhile waiting in a separate room as per protocol. Ukrainian delegation was in fact supposed to reconvene for lunch. The Ukrainian delegation was in fact then instructed to leave the White House. Clearly, this has been an unprecedented scenario in the Oval Office. Now, US-Ukraine, as far as their collision course is concerned, what are going to be the implications for Russia and for Ukraine? Not to forget, all of EU and NATO. Ukraine clearly is now at a disadvantageous position. With no US support, Ukraine could be compelled to compromise. There is a shift in US stance which could reduce the NATO backing. What happens to NATO's own security concerns? It's going to be difficult for EU alone to tackle Russia because remember, majority of the military aid was coming in from the United States. And the fifth implication is that Russia is now in a stronger position to impose ceasefire, that too on their terms and conditions. Back home, Zelensky's leadership is also coming under pressure, something that's very much evident in that call for impeachment against the Ukrainian president. And it could also destabilize Zelensky's government in Ukraine, as is also getting intensified by Donald Trump's own criticism of the Ukrainian president. On that note, after what has ensued in the Oval Office, let me introduce my guests today who will be adding their perspective to all the developments. I'm joined in by Ruslan Botnik, who's the director of Ukrainian Institute of Politics, Fred Weir, who's a political analyst and expert of Russian affairs, and he's also a renowned journalist. I'm also joined in by Major General A.K. Sivach, who's a geopolitical and defense analyst. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in. In fact, Ruslan, if I may ask you, clearly Ukraine is right now in a disadvantageous position. But now that there is no minerals deal done, is there still hope for Ukraine?
Yeah, but of course we are discussing this very sharp dialogue between the presidents in the Oval Room in the White House. But we need to remember that this dialogue was only 10 minutes, but entire dialogue between the presidents was around 50 minutes. So only 10 minutes, such a sharp discussion. Of course, it influences on Ukrainian positions and the relations between the United States government and the Ukrainian government. And this influence will be in very bad, in disadvantage direction, I think so. But at the same time, United States is still interested in signing the mineral agreement.
They're interested if the Ukrainian president tenders in the apology which they are demanding, and clearly they are interested only on their terms and conditions. Perhaps what can also resume the diplomacy right now, which seems to be going downhill, is if the Ukrainian president shows more respect and gratitude towards US.
Yeah, and I was waiting for such apologizes during the Fox TV interview of Ukrainian president, but it was not successful. And I think Ukraine will try to find another approach toward United States relations, and maybe we'll see another person from Ukrainian side who will make a deal with United States, who will continue these relations.
It would be interesting to see who will be that person. Will that person in fact emerge from the European Union or one of the NATO members? In fact, let me quickly go across to Fred on that note. Fred, are we looking at Russia, which is currently holding the upper hand over here? We've seen the entire peace dialogue ensue between Moscow and Washington. There are concerns that is Russia getting an upper hand in these negotiations? How is Russia now going to proceed? Is there still hope for peace, and is that peace now going to be on their terms?
That was a remarkable spectacle in the White House, and I think it was largely destructive of any kind of diplomatic hopes. But everybody will recalculate, reform, and we'll be back at a process. And as Ruslan said, maybe not with Zelensky involved. But I think that the key issue here is the situation on the battlefield. This, when Donald Trump says you've got no cards to play, he's clearly looking at the maps that show Russian forces inching forward across the whole 1,000 kilometer long front line. this war, if it isn't brought to an end through a peace negotiation, then the Russians are ultimately going to win, probably sometime this year, and the situation of Ukraine will be much, much worse. This is what Trump is talking about, and he's right. He has a rude and hectoring style. He is not a born diplomat, and that creates problems. I'm a Canadian, and we are really upset at the way he talks to Canada. But
and the Prime Minister.
At the end, the Prime Minister and threatening to annex our country. I mean, that sort of thing is not diplomatic speak at all. So, but in this case, I think that the process between Russia and the United States will continue. They are already restoring their diplomatic and other relations right across the board. It's an extraordinary process that's going on of normalization, and I think that they'll come to some kind of a blueprint for ending this war. I hope soon. But
that's very optimistic, and that's how I'd like to bring in Major General A.K. Sivach as well. Major General, how do you see this war now moving forward, the trajectory of all of this? Is this even going to come to any kind of an end? And is NATO or Europe, along with the United Kingdom, enough to defend Ukraine now without the United States?
Ankansha, one thing is very clear, that today, whatever Ukraine is fighting, the majority of the weapons are coming from US. The almost 40 to 50% military support which has been given to Ukraine to fight against Russia is from US. If the US do not help Ukraine, I don't think Europe along with UK will able to handle it. See, the problem is that these countries are already having an economic problem, and the quantum of weapons which they have used it are now feeling a pinch as far as their own defense is concerned. So they are feeling it that they cannot give more weapons to Ukraine because tomorrow they will be also vulnerable. So the question comes is that without American help, it will be very difficult for Ukraine to fight a long war with Russia. And as on today, the situation on the battlefield is not very good for Ukraine. In the eastern Ukraine, it has only lost about 18 to 20% of the land, including Crimea, which it lost in 2014. And in Donbas, Zaporizhia and Kherson, every day they are losing land to Russia. If the war continues like this, they will keep on losing more land. Only good thing is that Ukraine able to get Kursk, which is about 1,200 square kilometers. They are still holding on. But overall, I feel it that if Ukraine has to fight less US, it will be very difficult. In spite of getting a support from Europe as well as from UK, that is not going to make much difference. So
all right, let me quickly bring in Ruslan, in fact, because I'm running short of time. Ruslan, is a minerals deal going to be the only ray of hope, given that that will at least ensure that Washington is there as a backstop for any Russian deterrence?
No, of course. And if you will see very carefully for such a dialogue, that was dialogue not about the mineral deal. That was dialogue about the peaceful resolution, about the peaceful deal, about the ceasefire and so on.
But there was supposed to be a sealing of the mineral deal, which didn't happen. We've even seen pictures of where that deal was supposed to be signed, with a press conference to have followed.
Yeah, you're right. So the main goal of this dialogue was not only a mineral deal, was a question of the future frame of this peaceful deal and Ukrainian president behavior. United States and Donald Trump and his team, they want that Ukraine was very sensitive to the nowadays United States administration approach. They want to take the control over the political behavior of Ukrainian government now.
No, now that you're talking about the behavior of the Ukrainian government, I want to have quick thoughts from you about how this is now going to shape up Zelensky's own political prospects in Ukraine. We have that news coming in of one of the imprisoned Ukrainian MPs, in fact, initiating impeachment proceedings. How is this now shaping up the whole narrative surrounding the Ukrainian president, who himself
very,
has been,
very-
in fact, called a dictator
Yeah.
by the US president in the past.
I'm also trying to cut our time. It will influence in an ambivalent way. From one side, from the political elite side, of course, it's a disaster. That such a dialogue is a disaster. And from other side, from people's side, Ukrainian president behaved very, very heroic during this dialogue. He was against the most powerful leader of the world. So I don't know exactly for nowadays, but from the elite's points, of course, Zelensky is losing its position inside of Ukrainian elites
All
and
right.
inside of
Let me
Ukrainian political
quickly
system.
bring in Fred. Fred, I'd like to end with your thoughts. How do you see Russia moving forward? Is this now paving the way forward for Russia to move even further?
Fully with better prepared meetings. I think this is one of the weaknesses of Donald Trump's style of diplomacy is that it's off the cuff. He does not have working groups and people preparing and getting an agenda in line. He just meets face to face and tries to do a deal. This explosion that happened was seemingly spontaneous, but it was because there was no preparation to the meeting. It just happened. And that's Trump's way. I don't think that's Putin's way. And it's certainly, I know a lot of Russian diplomats, they are very classical in their approach. And so they will insist on agendas being prepared well in advance before leaders meet. So hopefully it will be soon, but hopefully it won't turn out like that.
All right. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in on this discussion. And with that, let's